because this is going to be an amazing episode. This is going to be that episode that you just do not want to miss because, I mean, if you guys have been wondering, what is a Biden presidency going to look like for the real estate market? That is exactly what we're going to be talking about today.
It ain't over yet.
What?
It ain't over yet.
What's not over?
It ain't me about Biden presidency. Nobody's clarified.
Well, I'm not.
He's going to sue his way
I
to the
didn't
top.
say. Yeah, well, I'm not saying that it is or it isn't. I'm just saying what would a Biden presidency mean for the real estate market? So for those of you that are watching, I will greatly appreciate it if you guys share this link on your platforms and everything. That way we let the people know where the new link is, because we did have like 20 plus people join before, and now there's only 3 of us. And I think, 2 of the 3 are probably in the room. So, if you guys could just go ahead and share this, that would help out a lot. Get let everybody know where the new link is and where we are. Even if you can drop this new link under the last YouTube chat, Kim, maybe you can do that on our Facebook and everything and let people know. And and Kim sent out email with this updated link for people to know. So, with that being said, let's resume our scheduling.
What?
No, what do you say that? Our scheduled programming? No?
Our scheduled program?
I don't know.
Scheduling?
I don't watch a lot of TV. Sometimes I forget what they say. But we got a lot going on today. As many of you may or may not know, there's a presidential election going on. And it is a roller coaster, much like we anticipated. I mean, we did anticipate this being a roller coaster. Unless Trump really just took over everything and just went ahead and just pretty much had the whole country show up in support, it was going to be a challenge. And that's what it's been, right? It's been a challenge. Right now, Biden is pretty much leading in the majority of the polls. They're really trying to get to the last vote counted, because for whatever reason, it seems like that last vote is going to make a difference. Hopefully, this election doesn't get too crazy. There's just so many things going on with this. There's so much talk of corruption. I mean, what do you think of the whole corruption angle and all that's going on?
I mean, it doesn't surprise me one bit. Wake up. No, I'm posting the new link on Facebook. Give me a second. You're like, both on social media. So, sorry. The corruption aspect of it, it's no surprise. I mean, from both sides, because it is a neck and neck race from the very beginning. Do you
think there is corruption? And not to get conspiratorial, but I'm kind of looking at all the stuff what they're saying is corruption and everything. And one thing that I am hearing consistently is that they're getting in cities more votes than there are registered voters, right? But when you're looking at the overall of the electoral college and you're looking at the overall of all the votes, I don't think even that corruption is really making a dent in this election.
I mean, in the close ones, the ones that actually matter, that are coming down to, those are the ones they're talking about. The ones that what is it? Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, and Nevada are the 4 left. Biden needs just one of those, and he's got it. But Trump was leading in 3 of those. And then just like Michigan and Wisconsin right now, they're saying it's a $20,000 vote, $20,000 vote separation between Biden and Trump, to where all of a sudden, he had 500,000 person vote lead going in Tuesday night. Then coming out of that, he winds up losing 650 by 150,000. To where I get mail-in ballots take longer to count and stuff like that. All the voter laws, regulations. I think it's just a lot of irregularities that are going on. I don't think you can create 150,000 vote skew by certain fraudulent or miscalculations and things like that. But right now, I saw he pulled ahead in Georgia by 900.
Who is he?
Biden. He pulled ahead of Trump by 900 votes. And it's one of those like, okay, now 900 votes across, I think Georgia's has like 4 or 5 million votes. Like that's a very small percentage to be able to get tweak a little extra, drop a few extra ballots, count a few extra, miscalculate things where a recount can move 900 votes one way or the other.
I completely agree. So a recount, you're kind of bringing up what happened between Gore and Bush, that whole fiasco that happened then, and they needed the recount going on. I honestly, like I said, I really do hope that it doesn't go to that, that it doesn't get that crazy and that bad, because it's just, I think all those things are just so bad for the country.
Oh, I agree. Right? And that's one thing. I was reading a article by Tucker Carlson with Fox News about, he's saying that it's come to the point where medias think they can dictate the elections, where they come out ahead, just like you made the point, like Arizona, like they called it so fast. It's like boom, out of nowhere, oh, he's got it. They're so confident, but like he has been gaining ground in those, and he might be right, they might be wrong, who knows. But to where the media doesn't have or has the power to influence these elections anymore, to where they just make these calls and stop reporting on it, and people stop caring, because they said that back in 2000, it's like, my God, like the extent that they went into to show that there's the system actually worked, and it was coming down, it was going to be close, that the news coverage, they had people, they went in there, they were hanging the ballots, they showed people counting the ballots, they showed like the process is going through, but everything's been the kind of this like dark cloud, to where I'll come out in Pennsylvania where they didn't have to be supervised to count votes, to where like it's just like, seriously, so anybody behind closed doors can count the ballots. And so that to me, it's like, oh, right. But he said like in 2000, I mean, I was only 11 years old. I don't know. This is what I just read. Yeah. But they said they had bipartisan people in there watching every vote be recounted, the whole thing tallied up and gone through again. But there's a lot of this between so many different states. But this whole coronavirus and the mail-in ballot is just throwing this whole system for a whole new loop, to where I think they said in Pennsylvania in 2016, they only had like just over 250,000 mail-in ballots. Mm-hmm. Now they're like 2.5 million mail-in ballots. So it's just heavily bogging down the system.
What I'm honestly shocked by is we're in 2020. How is this shit not figured out yet about voting? I mean, how with all the technology, with all the things that's going on, how is this not figured out yet? And you're saying I don't think they want it all. They don't want it figured out. Does that mean what you're saying is they want to have the opportunity to corrupt if they need to? Why don't they want to figure it out?
Not so the system doesn't, or make it not want to figure it out. I think the system won't let them figure it out, because no matter what, somebody wants to complain of why they lost. It's not, there's voter fraud. Russia implemented or influenced the 2016 election. Oh, their absentee ballots are influencing this one. It's always the side that's losing that creates a fuss that there was some kind of fraudulent thing. To where like the system could be perfect the way it is now, but the side that loses or calls a tight race isn't going to let it be.
Well, I saw a meme this morning that I thought was kind of funny, where last election, right, there was upheaval about the corruption, the manipulation, all these things. It was unacceptable. And the meme says, what about now? Where's all this uproar of the corruption and manipulation? So there was corruption, manipulation in the last election, but not this one. And that's the thing, like, again, I don't want to sound cynical or anything, but it's one of those things that I worry about, where if that's the case, do your votes really matter then? Right? Does your vote really count when it only counts if it's going towards the person or the agenda that we're pushing forward? Like, that's kind of scary to think.
Yeah.
That's the case, that it's not. No, your vote counts, and if the public speaks and the public wants Biden, let's say, then that's what it is. If they want Trump, then that's what it is, right? But is it more that the power? And I've always heard this saying. I don't know who said it originally, but they said, if your votes really mattered, it would be illegal to vote. And I'm like, that's a very scary quote and a very scary premise to think about in America, right? I understand. Even where I'm from in Argentina or other countries, that's how they run. But here, I'm like, ouch, and if the American public, I think, agrees to that, we're going to see a huge issue, as far as uprisings and everything, because Americans, they like to be heard. That's the whole foundation of the country. So I don't know. I mean,
Tommy Ray puts in here, if your vote is a gun in your hand, it will always count. Like, yeah, that's true. But
we're not condoning violence. So just to be clear, the thoughts of people watching is not the views of Prime Homes.
Yeah.
Political disclaimer. But
your point that you're getting at, it's it is a scary election, but it does show that the importance of getting out and voting, and I think the transparency of showing like how these things are. I think it should be, because when I was reading it, the founding fathers, they wanted to leave it up to states of how, because you're not voting for the president, you're voting for how you want your state to allocate your electoral votes, is what you're going towards. So it's up to the states how they determine to award those electoral votes, just like Nebraska and Maine don't do the whole all their electoral votes to one candidate. They split them up, so they leave it up to the states. But then when you have this,
I'm sorry, explain that.
You're voting for the president, yes, but really what you're voting for is how you want your state to award its electoral votes, because it's the electoral college, not by the popular vote.
And those states split it?
Maine and Nebraska. They don't award all of their electoral votes towards one candidate. So right now, Nebraska is where 2 go to Trump, 1's going to Biden. Maine is the same thing. 2 electoral votes are going to Biden, 1's going to Trump.
Why?
That's just how they split up their electoral votes. I mean, they can go it however they can control their own way to award their electoral votes.
So let's kind of, now that you bring that topic up, let's talk about electoral votes, right? Because we've spoken to good friends of ours, and we hear it a lot where they're trying to get rid of.
Well, they don't believe in the
electoral votes,
college,
and they want the popular vote. So I believe that you have a much nicer way of explaining this than I do. I think I offend a lot of people the way I explain things. But
you offend a lot of people when you just speak.
Yes, we're gonna have disclaimers moving forward of when you listen to anything where I'm in it. But explain the electoral college, the votes, and why it still makes more sense than popular vote.
Okay, so I was having a conversation with a friend after the 2016 election, and he was on he was center left, and he believed, he's like, well, why do we not go towards popular vote? And I explained to him, it's like, well, and he also comes from a densely populated area on the East Coast. I said, well, the problem is when you have such a dense population that everyone kind of gets the same kind of mentality, and they tend to vote that same way. So that's why you have Biden leading by like 3 million votes over Trump. The problem is then you would essentially have the country run by the major cities and the coast, because that's where the densely population is. What the Electoral College allows for is for the little guy in Central America, or Central United States, the Midwest, to actually have a voice. Because if you do it by the popular vote, then you only listen to the problems where the people have the density, where the votes are. So you listen to the coasts. But I use like, what does anybody know? Like, we have different problems. The East Coast is going to have much different problems than Central America, to where like, what are they? Because they want greenhouse gas gone. It's like, well, if you eliminate fossil fuels, how is a farmer in Kansas going to run that diesel tractor to plow those fields? So it would absolutely just decimate even further the central portion of America, the small town America, and not allow them to have a voice, because they go by population. So politicians are going to go where the votes are. So they're going to listen to California and the East Coast, where the population is, because
not California and the East Coast. We got Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, Houston. They're blue as shit. So I mean, they're major cities.
Yeah,
they're growing.
yes.
They're getting heavily populated. So, and I'm not saying blue in a.
But even then, you give Texas, but Texas still, the population went for Trump versus Biden.
The whole population?
The Texas population went right, not left.
Well, obviously.
For the popular vote. But right. I also said the Electoral College, though, is like, that's why your governors, your municipalities, like your states go by popular vote. Right. And then whoever wins the popular vote within the state gets awarded the Electoral College. So that gives these smaller states a voice. But now you have states, and this started in 2000, that up until 2000, everyone did it the same way of popular vote gets the Electoral College votes go to elect the president. But now I think there's like 15 states. Colorado was a recent one that decided that whichever way the national popular vote goes, the state will award its Electoral College votes for. So basically it means if Colorado were to overwhelming majority say like they had 2 million votes, 1.5 million voted for, say, a Republican and 500,000 for a Democrat, but Democrat nationally had more votes. That means Colorado would now award its electoral college, even though the state didn't want a Republican president, but since they switched their election laws, now they're going to vote for whichever the popular vote goes. And this is coming out of after 2000, and then it even people uproar again in 2016. And it's this political divide because it seems like there are more Democrats in the nation, and the last several elections have proven that the popular vote has gone to that candidate. So now they're wanting more and more people to follow that mentality to get rid of the electoral system, to where they're saying get rid of the electoral college. Well, nobody wants to get rid of the electoral college, but they're changing their voter laws of how they award those electoral votes.
And I think, so you made a lot of, obviously, my opinion, right? Excellent votes, excellent points on voting, where you cannot represent the whole world on the opinions of a few people, right? The whole world of America, but you cannot represent the whole country on the views of a few people. And one of the biggest
the majority in a densely populated areas, where that's where you would have.
But here's the next point, right? Florida just passed that bill just passed, got voted for, of raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour over the course of the next 5 years, I think, until like 2025, 2026. It's going to increase.
They raise it.
It's going to be raising at $1, right? And they want to make that, by they, I do mean the Democrats, because they're the ones mostly pushing for it, is they want to make this federal. The issue with making it federal is that, yes, Florida can do it. And I think the way Florida is doing it makes sense. They're going to raise it to 8.25 or something like that now. And then it's going to be $1 a year until it hits 15. So, or they're going to raise it to $10, whatever, do the math. They're going to raise it to whatever it is, and then going to do $1 a year until it hits $15. If they do this across the country as a federal law, you're going to hurt the rural areas that are ran by moms and pop shops, right? Not by big corporations. And now you have these mom and pop shops that they cannot afford to pay, and nor should they be paying that much, because in those areas, the standard of living, the cost of living is substantially less. Where $8 goes a lot further than $8 in New York City. Where I don't think things like that need to be such an umbrella, everybody in the same boat. Because I think also maybe $15 an hour in Florida it makes sense, but maybe in New York City it doesn't, right? Maybe in New York City the minimum wage should be like $20. I think every state, in the way that the country was founded, was still correct, where every state should have the right to govern itself, where it shouldn't be a federal law.
National thing. Oh, 100%. Because like you have your areas like Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, that like these small communities, they cannot afford that kind of, but it comes from both sides. And I fear the caveat to that is like, well, now you have people abusing that power that live in these big cities by underpaying their employees.
Yeah.
So that's what they're trying to say is like, well, for the benefit of the majority, some of the minority might have to suffer on that. So that's the kind of argument to it. But it is going to kill rural small towns even more. That is like, I grew up in a town of 1,500 people. If you put a $15 minimum wage on that town, you'll destroy it even more, because now it's like the food costs will get astronomical. And then there's not the industry behind it to support and raise the wage amongst everybody, the living wage across one shot, to bring that kind of stuff up. So,
and that's always kind of been my issue when people try to talk about social programs and helping people out and all this. Like, I'm all for that, and you are too. And I think the majority of us are for helping the people that need help. Mm-hmm. But what I'm not for, and what I think we need to stand against, is the generalization of laws and everything, where it's like, hey, this is an exception in this place, but let's make that the law in the whole country. And it's like, well, hold on. Does that make sense? Can we go into the rural areas? Can we go into the rest of the country and actually see if that makes sense? And that's where, I didn't want to get political, but I will hit this point briefly. Is that
cover your children's ears?
Yes. Yeah, take your children away from this. But I believe that Congress needs to be reevaluated in the Senate. We are not being represented correctly. You understand?
Okay.
And I believe that the people in power are not representing us. Yet we keep voting in a certain way, either left or right, and not voting how we should be voting locally to dictate how they represent us there. I mean, one of the things that blew my mind was Washington, D.C.'s percentage that went to Biden.
Oh, Lord.
What was it,
92 or 93%?
I mean, talk about a president for the people there. But, you know, you have Washington, D.C., 92% goes for Biden, right? There's no bipartisanship there at all. So you're in the rural areas, you're in other states, and it's like you're not really being represented to how you think you are.
Yeah.
So then they're making all these rules, all these laws, and now you're the one paying the price for everything.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you know, not to kind of, again, not to get too political, but we go back to the whole point of this podcast, right? The whole point of Coffee with the Johns is to discuss how these policies, how everything is affecting your business. And these things affect your business. Because if you're a local business owner in a more rural city and they just force your minimum wage to $15 an hour, you could essentially go out of business. Because now you're being forced to pay somebody that. Or you got to start getting creative and you start kind of getting subcontractors, or you start paying people under the table. You got to start, in a sense, breaking the law.
It creates almost like a black market, almost. Like
yes.
Kind of prohibition style with liquor. It's just like, well, I'm just not going to pay employees now. Or they automate more to where it's like, we're going to force, we want all these wages, and McDonald's comes out and this is like, yeah, we're not going to do that. So we're just going to automate our entire production line. So to where you only have like 3 people working in the whole store, and it's really just to maintain, to put burgers inside the machine that's cooking them. So that's what I think would happen, is that you're just going to force more automation onto people, because like you try to create this litigious society. You have to provide sick leave. You have to provide paid leave. You have to provide maternity leave. You have to get $15 an hour. You have to this.
It's the you have to part.
You have to. Yeah. That eventually people are going to be like, well, I can just hire a machine now. You've made it to where it's more profitable
100%.
To invest in technology to eliminate that ability. And that is where the capitalism side of it does work, where like just overall governance can't
real
come in and
capitalism,
just
not what we've been having.
Yeah, exactly. You got to let people fail.
Yes.
But I think that's what's going to happen. And like everyone I remember that argument, like, oh, McDonald's needs to be paying more. You cannot be working at McDonald's and working, living on welfare. It's like McDonald's wasn't designed to be a career kind of move starting at a cash register. You can, not saying you can't, but you put $15 minimum wage for somebody that just pushes buttons on a kiosk. It's like, yeah, you're going to eliminate that by now I can walk into there and say, I want a Big Mac. And then a machine makes the Coke, it makes the burger, it flips it up, more consistency, and it appears there by a conveyor belt. Like, that's what you're going to create.
And it's still McDonald's, so it's going to taste the same. So, I mean, it's not like people are cooking a recipe up, everything. McDonald's has their supply lines so figured out that you can have a burger in California and you can have a burger in Paris, and a McDonald's burger is going to taste the same.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, that's the thing that I always talk about when people are trying to say, kind of going back to the whole point of this episode, is how is Biden presidency going to affect the market? How is it going to affect real estate? Well, if his next thing is to raise taxes. That's what Biden wants to do, right? He wants to raise taxes on the wealthy. That's fine. You want to raise taxes on the wealthy. Now, let's actually understand what that means, though, because you're not raising taxes on the rich that you think you're raising taxes on.
You're not raising taxes on Jeff Bezos, George Soros, Warren Buffett, all those guys.
Wow, George Soros. You throw that dirtbag in there. But anyway,
I've never met him. I don't know if he's a dirtbag or not.
Anyway, but you're raising the minimum. You're raising the taxes on all the. You think you're raising it on those people. You're not, because those people are contributing to the country what the tax code wants them to contribute: jobs, housing, development, everything,
research,
right? Oil, whatever incentives are being given for the economy to grow is what they're doing, which is why they don't pay that much in taxes, right? Who are you going to raise it to? Is the workers, employees that are making that kind of money. People that are in that level of debt because they went to school, they got the education, they did everything. Actors, athletes, all these people, they're the ones that are going to get hit with these high taxes. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to hurt them even further, because we are in a terrible economy right now. As much as they want to prop up the Dow Jones, and as much as they want to prop up unemployment and all the nonsense they want to do, we're still in a very weak economy. This is not strong by any means. So if you increase taxes anytime soon, you're going to further hurt the people that are actually growing the economy, because they're the ones spending.
Everyone focuses on people only vote every 4 years. Where they only come out and start voting like this when it's a presidential election. It's like, you got to understand how our entire system works. It's like every 2 years, the House of Representatives has to be reelected. There's senators that go for 6-year terms. Like, those people are all part of it. Where like Trump wants to, or they're saying, oh, Biden's going to raise taxes. He's going to pack the Supreme Court. He's going to filibuster. And it's like, not without the Senate, he's not. And it's looking as a way to, if things stay the way they are, unless there's just like everyone thinks Biden's got it, and it's a miracle if Trump pulls it out. It's the same thing. It's a miracle if the Republicans lose the Senate. You can't do all of that stuff without having the House, the Senate, and the president all agreeing. And if you got one with a different party, which I'm a fan of, is always having one part of the government being the opposite of the other one, because now that forces a bipartisan working relationship. So you can't just have them just run through like, hey, we're just going to vote party lines all the way across and we're going to get whatever we want through. Mm-hmm. But now it's saying, hey, you're not going to raise taxes because you're not going to get it through the Republican Senate. You can't just pump unlimited amounts of money into it because Republicans still have to get behind it. And because since they hold the majority in the Senate.
And that's also honestly like one of the things that does bother me as well is the fact that so the stock market has been kind of going up, and they're going up because they're excited that we're going to have a gridlock government, right? We're going to, if nobody freak out, if Biden was to win and the Republicans hold the Senate, nothing is going to go through. Yep. That's not an achievement. You understand that we keep going back to the same thing. This is the foundations of this is so broken that you can't even do any change. You can't even do anything for the country, because if you have a Democratic president and a Republican Senate, well, if this Democrat says one thing, the Republicans are going to say no because you said it. That's the only reason. Well, but if you don't do it our way and give in, then we're not going to pass this. Or if we do it way, and then you reject
the problem is, like, if you do that for too long, you will eventually get voted out because you will see that you're not getting shit done, and somebody new will come in and replace you over time.
Yeah, and somebody new let's say, comes in and replaces Trump, right? The Senate stays a majority, and then what the hell changes? And then let's say the next election, right? Trump comes back in because if he loses, I'm sure he's coming back in 4 years. But and at that point, he'll still probably be Biden's age. Yep. So he'll be just as sleepy as Biden is. And then he'll come in and he'll try to pass things. And then if the Republicans lose the Senate, it'll be the same thing. It'll be gridlock again. So it's like, why can't we just stop doing, left and right and start doing, let's actually analyze what makes sense. And I saw an interview a while back with Wolf Blitzer? Yeah,
Wolf Blitzer. Well, Blitzer? I mean, Tommy just put something in here that I want to address too. The House and Senate can pass it without the president. I thought if they had a supermajority, it is doable. Am I wrong? Can't they bypass the president's veto? Yes, they can. With a supermajority vote to where if the House and the Senate, if they had, say, like...
But who runs the House?
Well, what's to say, if they had a supermajority, and right now neither one of them have a supermajority in the House or the Senate.
What's a supermajority?
I think it's
just a majority?
No, over like two-thirds votes. So like in the Senate, you have to have 66 votes.
They don't have that.
66. So if the president does veto a bill, the Senate can come back, and as long as they get a supermajority vote, they can overthrow a veto. But as of right now, no, I don't know when it's happened or how long ago it was that any party had a supermajority in the national House and Senate, to where like you go look at California, they have a supermajority in there, to where like anything that they want to get passed, they can get through and get passed because they have 2/3 of the House and the Senate are of one Democratic affiliate or one party affiliation. Right. So,
yeah, and my point goes back to the same thing: is it's still sad that things need to be rammed through or done that way, where we can't come to an agreement of saying, hey, this is for the best benefit of the public. And going back to what I was saying about the interview with Wolf, is that he's CNN, I believe, or one of those news
MSNBC.
One of the more,
not Fox,
right? So you have Fox, and then you have all the other ones. So the non-Fox news networks, and he is highly respected amongst a lot of reporters. And he had on Nancy Pelosi, and it's a funny interview. I recommend everybody go check it out. After this, I'll probably drop the link of the interview below. But it's a funny interview because she goes on very confident because it's their type of media, right? So, softball questions and all this. And he comes out and says, what's going on with the stimulus? And she's like, well, the Republicans and all this. He's like, okay, right. But president, they would pass a $1.8 trillion bill. She's like, yeah, but that's not what, he's like, I get that's not what you want. But 1.8 trillion when the country is hurting is still 1.8 trillion. That is still money that is going to help a lot of people. Why not do it? Oh, and she was getting pissed. Like, you can tell that if she can
she's
curse,
getting frustrating.
She could definitely reach across.
That was like an 11-minute interview too.
Yeah, but she was heated, and he was really grilling her.
Yeah.
Where I believe that was actually some good reporting, in my opinion, on a media site that's considered more liberal than anything, right? But he did ask the right question, where it's like, I understand it's not the 2.2 trillion that you want, and it's not covering all the stuff that you want, but it's still 1.8 trillion to the American public.
Yeah. Well, it's like, it was the big sticking points where, like, a boosted unemployment was a big piece of that. Getting checks to American people was a big portion of that, where it seemed like the big sticking points was on the government and municipality, where they wanted to bail out a lot of states and municipalities, to where that was the portion. It's like, okay, state and municipalities, they can deal with that shit later. It's like, get it to the frickin' people. And that's where the Republicans and the Democrats did have an agreement on, but it was just like these government levels that they didn't want to adjust to. And that's where a lot of the stuff is, to where there's no telling if they wouldn't have passed that either, or what's going to come of this, because the Republicans, several of them have come out and saying, like, we are not in favor of spending another $1 trillion on this. And now they're trying to come out with $2 trillion packages again, to where, like, it would be a battle in Washington to get a lot of this stuff through. And McConnell's come out and said, as soon as the Senate comes back from their recess, that's going to be the first thing they're going to take up is the next stimulus package. So
before the next recess, which is probably like another week from that.
Yeah, you got the Christmas holidays.
With the amount of recess they take, I'm like, Jesus. Do you guys ever do any actual work? Like, holy crap, you take more vacations than anybody I know.
Well, a lot of them were fighting for re-elections and stuff like that, so they had campaigns to run and things like that. It's like,
I mean, and that goes into another, can of worms of, like, term limits and shit, but whatever. Well, let's kind of move on a little bit. Again, staying on topic, how's Biden presidency going to affect the market? So as you can see in this article, with a Biden win, the FHFA doubles down on ending the government-sponsored enterprise conservatorship.
Woo, we got it. Did you?
Holy shit. Come on. Got the word right.
Okay, the little backstory there, what just happened there. So the last 2 days we've been talking about this article, and John has been struggling with the word conservatorship for so long, to where he's like, all right, every time I come up to that, just say it for me, just to complete my sentence.
Yeah.
So did you sit in front of the mirror last night and just go, conservatorship?
No.
You got
this.
Well,
even today we were talking about it, and I still screwed it up. But yeah, it just flew out, man. When you're on the
more
spotlight,
and more American every day.
America.
You can now speak American.
Yeah, freaking words, and there are many consonants and stuff. But anyway, reading this article, it was very interesting, and you have to go kind of 7 levels deep on the article, and I'm going to post the links of how the process works so you kind of fully understand it. But first of all, the biggest panic comes from the FHFA, where they're worried about Biden being elected because Trump is the one that pushed to get the government-sponsored enterprises, Fannie and Freddie, out of conservatorship, right? He's the one that wants them out, He's the one that wants them to operate individually, independently, as a company, as they were before the '08 crash, before the government took them in and gave them the billions of dollars to sustain the housing market. So that is what Trump is pushing for. They're saying that Biden has made it clear that he doesn't like that. He wants to keep Fannie and Freddie inside the government and keep them in there, because he feels that with them there, it's going to give the support that the housing market is going to need in this bad time that we're facing. So you have those two schools of thought, right? And then you have another one that I think is more prevalent to the director of the FHFA, is that they came out with the Supreme Court came out with a ruling that the president can essentially go in and fire and replace the director. This ruling came out for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So you can also see this here. And it came out that they can fire the director and put in a new one. So the Consumer Financial Bureau, they have the same format that the FHFA has, right? So what he's scared about is that already sets precedents that Biden can come in, and if what's his name? Calabria? Director Calabria doesn't do what Biden wants, he's going to get rid of him. Yep. Right? So he's scared because that's job security. So what he's doing is ramping up everything that he can to get, Fannie and Freddie out of this situation, the conservatorship. So he's working really hard to get them out. And that's where that 0.5% fee came in. And there's another article that we were reading here. Somewhere. So, here it is. So in this article, he talked about, what the adverse market effects are if they're unwarranted for the refinance fee of mortgages. And really, because this takes place December 1st. So if you're refinancing any properties or anything like that, I mean, pretty much now, I think it's already being included. We talked about it. It's already being included in a lot of loans. So you're going to pay that 0.5. This is a money grab. This is literally exactly what it is. It's a money grab.
Oh, yeah.
They're trying to raise their reserves to meet that qualification so they can get out of conservatorship before Biden can get in there and cause any problems to them. The upside to all of this on their end is that Biden's not going to do this right away, because he is coming into the coronavirus. He is coming into a major crisis that I don't think he's going to have the time or the resources to put behind.
No, and I mean, there's a lot of other bigger things going on that, and that's kind of like the free market versus government. Government's full of checks and balances and moving extremely slow and takes forever to do things, where the free market can move in a much more nimbler, quicker way. To where, yes, they're in the conservatorship currently, but they're not the focal point of what's going on like they were in 08. So this does give them the flexibility to be like, all right, we need to set these standards, we need to raise cash, and we need to get out of this thing. And I think they should. I don't think the government should be stepping in and running these corporations like you've read in the past. I think it was the Creature from Jekyll Island. They talked about several of the bailouts of like the railroads, the trail cars, Lockheed Martin, the bailouts of how these governments stepped in and controlled companies. So I think getting out of conservatorship is a good thing for the overall market. But we go back to last week about possible interest rates rising, to where if they leave government conservatorship and they get out of it, is the free market going to want additional security via higher interest on these mortgages and things like that? Right. And that could drive up mortgage rates, even though the overall federal fund rate is still at 0.
Yeah.
So that is something to where it's like, hey, you're not backed by the government anymore, so it's not a federally backed loan. It's just backed by a private company now. So are they going to want additional yield for that additional risk?
And they will. I mean, no investor wants to take additional risk and not get compensated accordingly. Mm-hmm. The only time they would perhaps do something like that is if they really don't have a better option, right? That literally the whole world is going to shit, and like that's still the best option out there is a high risk investment at a low yield, which hopefully that doesn't happen. But if that's the case, then that's the only way they're going to buy into it. But if not, they need to raise the interest rates in order to make it more attractive for investors. Yep. So I do see where Biden is coming from, trying to keep Fannie and Freddie within the government, because again, they can further keep the crash from happening if a crash comes in the housing market, because that is a huge gauge to the success of the country, right? It's the housing market, and that is one thing that the government is very scared of. So, which is why another part of the promise that Biden has for becoming president is he wants to invest $640 billion over the next 10 years, so Americans can have access to housing that is affordable, stable, safe and healthy, accessible, energy efficient, and resilient. Wow.
It's a lot of
yeah, he definitely has that plan locked down. My question is always like, what the hell does any of this mean, right? Like, how are you going to do that? $640 billion investment. What does that mean? What does that matter? A 400, you know what I mean? Like, when I was just looking at Invitation Homes, this is another article that's very interesting. They're actually doing a joint venture with Rockpoint Group, and they're investing $1 billion to pick up single-family residential, right? And that $1 billion, they anticipate that they can pick up about 3,500 more homes using that kind of money. So you're gonna do that with $1 billion, 3,200 homes. What is he trying to do with $640 billion? Like, what's he trying to change? What policy is he trying to affect?
Yeah, well,
I don't know.
I think it's a lot of that housing is a right and it's not something you should have to work for, much like they think on healthcare. That it's like it should be all government sponsored healthcare programs.
But housing isn't. I mean, okay, a roof over your head, yes, it's a human right. You should have a roof over your head. But owning a home isn't a right.
Yeah,
I don't think it's a right. I think that's a privilege.
I
you should be
agree.
able to work your way to owning a home. That's why it was the American dream to own a home, right?
Yeah.
Not an American dream to be given a home.
Yeah.
You want to own a home. You want to be able to buy a home because you did enough in your life, in your career, in whatever you're doing. You made the money. You saved your money. You build your credit, whatever it is, and you bought yourself a home.
Yeah.
You earned a home, right? So I'm more worried about that whole handout part of things.
Well, the handout portion of it and coming down on these corporate landlords and individual investors and just people that like have saved, have been financially responsible and built themselves a portfolio of rental properties. They well, now we're going to tax the hell out of you on that and force you to sell those things because now you are artificially keeping the entry-level price point from being put back into the housing market to where people can afford an entry-level home. Because that's where all of our houses are entry-level, because that is where you can actually maintain some cash flow from the properties.
Yeah.
So that's where a lot of landlords do hold property. Invitation Homes, how many do they hold? Like 80,000 homes. A lot of those were picked up in the wake of 2008 and the foreclosure crisis. And where were a lot of those homes at? They were on the lower end. So to where they're saying, oh, well, home ownership's dropping. You're not allowing these things to turn over into the market. So they might go to them and say, look, we're going to buy these pieces from you. We're going to force you, kind of like eminent domain where you can take land from people. The private government can take land from a private citizen. Can the government take property from individuals, corporations, force them to put it on the market, and then they own it and give it to other people, or to certain people that they believe it's a right for them to have.
So that kind of actually ties in very nicely with this next article that I was reading yesterday. What's the governor of California?
Gavin
Newsom signs in homes for homeowners, not corporation.
Yep.
All right. So he signs in this new bill that essentially what it does is that it gives people. So if your house is getting foreclosed on, it's not allowing the lenders to bundle up the foreclosures and sell them to a big corporation like they did in 2008, right?
Yep.
Like they did in 2009 and all that. They were bundling them up, selling them to these massive companies, these big investment firms.
Just basically trying to offload their books. They're just like, we have so many homes, we need to get rid of these things. We'll just bundle up all the notes and just big corporate buyers
right,
go and buy them
which is what Invitation Homes and Rockpoint are pretty much. They're going to be buyers of stuff like that. So what they were saying is, which I'm kind of on the edge of whether I agree or disagree with this, where they're like, what we want to do is give homeowners the right of pretty much first refusal on that foreclosure, right? Which means is that the foreclosures come up, you're not going to bundle them, you're going to sell them individually. So then a person that is looking for a home and maybe wants a discount or something like that can go and bid on it and not have to worry about being bid out by a large corporation that we all know go to the foreclosure auctions and overpay because they don't care. It's just numbers on their books, right?
Well, they're there. Well, I don't know how California runs the real estate market, but here it's like I don't see very many individual homeowners walking to a foreclosure, a courthouse step with a FHA approved loan ready to go, saying I want to buy that house. Like
you gotta have cash. I mean,
well, that's what we're saying. Like I think it kind of falls on deaf ears. Like, well, I think they're going to come up with ways to actually get this figured out. So obviously pass this bill, and now the free market. I mean, same thing with the short sales, to where now when banks realized they were losing so much money of individuals wholesaling short sales, they're like, nope, needs to go on the open market now. So I think it's going to be something similar to where they're going to banks and whoever holds these notes, it's like you can't just go to the courthouse steps and bid cash. Like you need to go through a more formalized process to give the free market the ability, or individuals the ability to actually buy these houses with loans that actually do qualify. Because some of these, like, they're perfectly good houses. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. And then big banks come in here, big investment groups, and they get them for 60 cents on the dollar and literally need no work to them, put a tenant in it, and they're done. So that a house like that, I think it should have the opportunity to go to an individual that can build. And I do agree with that aspect of it. But then, and the homes that are destroyed, that can't qualify for financing, that need to be picked up by an investor via cash, those will still be available because there's still the FHA guidelines that you're not going to lend on a house that leans 6 inches to one side.
And as we've seen, the issue comes when you're buying a distressed home. If you're a homeowner, or let's say a small-time investor, and you don't understand much about real estate, which we know a lot of landlords that don't understand much about real estate, you buy a home that's distressed, a lot of the times what you end up doing is doing the bare minimum just to get it rented. Right? So now you're making the matter worse because you're not fixing major issues that the house needs to get fixed. You're not solving the problem that house has, and then you're renting it out, putting somebody else in there. This tenant is going to have a ton of problems as they live in the house. It's going to further deteriorate the house. It's going to make that homeowner, that landlord, lose more money in the investment, because then when they end up having to force to sell or something, they're going to sell at a loss. So it is, I think, a very tricky situation where you are forcing people to kind of get into it, where if we face that level of foreclosure, my question is, who's going to be able to afford those houses anyway? Like, I get they're selling at a discount, let's say, but who's going to buy them? Yeah. Right? If interest rates go up next year, who's going to afford them? If unemployment continues to rise, like let's say, Biden gets elected and he goes with this whole the COVID and everything and shuts down the economy again. It's going to further tank more businesses, right? And you can give the bailouts that you want. And I understand you're going to give bailouts. But those bailouts are not affecting, and they don't go to the people that are generating, what, $250,000, $300,000 a year? And you're like, well, they got a shit ton of money. Most of these people still live just like somebody that makes 50.
Still
they
paycheck
live
to paycheck.
Paycheck to paycheck. They owe everything. They have everything, so it's like, they're still going to be affected. Business owners are going to get those checks, and they're not going to pass it off to their employees like they did last time because they're scared. And now with what happened last time, it sets a precedence of saying, well, shit, now I definitely don't want to spend this money, because what if they do the same thing and they cut stimulus again? Now what do I do?
Now it becomes it's like I'm looking out for one, not our company.
And you
at
have
that
to.
point.
Everybody does.
Yeah.
I mean, this is not something of business owners or anything, but everybody looks out for number one. And we've seen this even with our friends that say they're conservative. Man, they would jump up for joy if they get a stimulus check, And it's like, well, why aren't you being entrepreneurial about your life, and doing something? But yet you will be so happy with a government handout because at the end of the day, you look out for number one. I'm not judging it. I'm just saying, like,
it's just saying, like you really have no direct say in the matter. So, like, a check comes in the mail with your name on it. It's like, well, I'm going to take it. It's not like I'm not going to. I mean, that now just becomes an illogical decision that it's like, you know what? I don't agree with this, so I'm just not even going to accept this check. Like, well, it's going to go to somebody no matter what, so it's got your name on it already. That's why you vote for the people that vote for these
What I'm saying
packages.
is that if you keep trying to put all these barriers on corporations and big investors and all this, then who's going to snatch up these properties? Who's going to get these properties are distressed, maybe vacant, left alone? Who's going to fix them?
People like us.
Yeah, but they're making all these regulations. Like, at some point, we're going to get affected as well.
Yeah.
You understand? Like, you're going to have to, they're probably going to say, no, the first dibs goes to somebody that's going to buy it to live in it.
Yeah.
You understand? So now we got to wait for that period to go over. You understand? Like, I think, it becomes a little tricky based on the economy. I think that we go back to the same thing of blanketing, coming out with a law that encompasses all. Obviously, I read the article. I don't know if that was the full law or if there's more to it. Another part of the law is that they're authorizing higher fees of $2,000 a day that the local government can levy on a corporation or other property owners, so not just corporations, that leave homes vacant or blighted.
Deteriorate. Yeah, I saw that where it's like, so now they can't sell it to somebody that's got the cash willing to go to get rid of this thing. But now you're saying, but you also now need to maintain it for the next person that comes along for an extended period of time. I think, what is it, 45 days?
Yeah.
That they can't sell it? I mean, luckily houses usually don't fall apart in 45 days. But, it's like
they were
houses,
falling apart
a house
already.
that is destroyed, that it's like,
yep.
You seriously? I took it over in this condition that it's already basically dilapidated, run down, trashed, and I can't sell it for 45 days. Now you're telling me I have to go in there and fix this thing up and get ready to go. Because, I mean, that's the scary thought of what it is. Like, oh, now the corporation that lent the money on it needs to fix it up and put it to ready, make it rent ready or make it livable for the next homeowner to come buy it. As like now it's like, wait. So I lent the money to the person. They were irresponsible and trashed the house. And now I got it back, didn't pay me my money. I took it back. Now I got to go in further to fix this house up to sell it to the next homeowner.
Yeah.
It's like, now that's a big stretch. And I can see the arguments like, well, then you should have done a better job of due diligence of lending the money to that person. It's like, come on now.
Okay.
Like you're getting way out there.
Well,
like I want a unicorn and rainbows too.
Going back to the American dream of home ownership is that they state that, having a home is most people's investment, right? Let's clarify. Your home is not an investment because it's just simply not. When people tell me, why don't you own a home? Because that's not an investment. That's literally a money pit. Like, when does it become an investment? When there's been enough appreciation.
Yeah, it's like it's an investment when you sell it.
Enough equity. And it's in a condition that you can capture all that equity when you sell the property.
Yeah.
Now it's an investment. But until that point happens, it is not an investment. So they're saying how they were stating California between 2006 and 2012, the number of owner-occupied homes nosedived by more than 320,000, right? While numbers of renter-occupied single-family homes soared by more than 720,000. I don't think that's an issue of corporations buying houses. I think that's more an issue of people now wanting to be tied down to a 30-year mortgage that if they move their job or they change their life in 3 years, they're losing money if it hasn't appreciated.
I disagree with you at 100%. I don't think people got affected. Like, I mean, short term, yes, the people got foreclosure, but still owning their own home. The people see it as like, I don't know how many just people that aren't in real estate, like that think you and I is like, I agree with you personally, but I don't think the average person is anywhere near that because they see, I was just speaking to a friend a couple weeks ago. He's like, he lives in Colorado, and
there you go.
Well, but he's like, he pays $2,500 a month. He's like, well, if I'm going to spend $2,500 in rent, I'd rather spend $2,500 on a house because then I can see that money back. That's how they think. It's not the flexibility. It's not the job security. Because I mean, he works in the construction industry. It's like his job moves, but he would still rather be tied down to a house. Because he sees it as, I'm not throwing away $2,500. Not that he has the flexibility, the liability of the house, and they don't think any of that stuff, the repairs, the maintenance.
Because I think the data is the data. I think, the fact that you have more people that are wanting to rent, wanting to move and upgrade or change as frequently as even millennials as they want to do it, owning a house is the last thing you want to be tied down to. They don't want to be tied down to anything. I mean, you look at it across technology, you look at it across anything. anything that has a lockdown of even a year or two scares most people. They're like, I want to have I'd rather pay more and have the option to cancel on a monthly basis.
I have never talked to a single person,
even relationships.
I've never talked to any individual that agrees with that as far as like housing goes.
I look at the stats. I'm not saying talking to individuals,
stats, but then talking to actual people.
Your individual reach may not be anything, it's your circle, right?
Yeah.
But you look at where the market is going, what it's been, even before COVID, there were more people looking for rentals than people were looking for houses. Houses were still selling. Obviously, I'm not saying houses don't sell.
Well, a lot of them because they can't afford it.
And then more people, more than ever before, investors own more houses than ever before, right? Most of the houses are being sold to more investors than homeowners. And homeowners are choosing to rent more than anything.
What is it? Houses are being sold to investors more than homeowners?
Than ever before. Not in relation to like, you know what I mean? Not more investors are buying than more homeowners, but more investors are buying than ever before.
Oh, yeah, because they're buying for appreciation, not for sound investment and cash flow.
Well, they're still investment properties, and they're renting them out.
I don't rent it out. I don't really know if it's a negative cash flow, I don't consider it an investment in my mind because it's the same thing as being a homeowner.
Well, who says it's negative cash flow though?
I'm saying if it is negative cash flow, like you're saying, but I get $100 extra a month. Like that's negative cash flow. Like, because yes, you make $100, but that doesn't take into account for any kind of maintenance, repairs, vacancies, anything like that. It's not a self-sustaining investment anymore. In my opinion on that.
No, of course. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all our opinions. But that's kind of what California is doing, and it's kind of picking up on the same thing that we were talking about Biden. It's trying to figure out what does housing look like for everybody? How do you get people into housing? And it seems like it's more of a trying to force people into housing.
Yeah.
You understand? Where I rather just leave it more of like, let's the market buy houses as they want to buy houses. Now, do you want to limit the amount of corporations that just snatch up all these houses and take the opportunity? I completely agree. I think that's a smart way of doing it to give regular people, individuals, a fighting chance.
It's artificially influencing the market when you get that kind of buying power to where you're limiting the supply. And now right now, there's no supply and there's a massive demand for housing. And that's what's pushing prices up significantly over the time and stuff like that. Or the last couple of months, it's like we've seen double-digit year-over-year appreciation basically since July. Yeah. And what has done that? It's like because there's a huge demand for housing and no supply.
Yeah.
So that is where if you have somebody come in here and just buying all this stuff cash because they can, it makes it hard.
Well, and then also another part of Biden's plan was a tax credit for first-time home buyers, upwards of $15,000. Yeah, $15,000, and they want to try to alter, which I don't know what this is going to mean, but the restrictive zoning law. So Trump came out with the opportunity zones.
Yeah.
They've been proven to have worked in a lot of areas because the opportunity zones have helped revitalize areas that were very,
depressed.
Brought down.
It's putting capital, incentivizing free capital to move into an economically depressed area to go for an tax advantage.
Right. But what I see is the left has been pushing as saying, but you're gentrifying those areas. You're kicking people out of their homes. They're looking at it that way, right? So when they're looking at it that way, how is that going to affect those opportunity zones in a Biden presidency? Will Biden pull back those opportunity zones, and pull back that kind of growth that we've seen in those areas into a point of where now, that's no longer given any incentive and investors are, because obviously that's how it works. You give incentives, that's where investors go. If you take the incentives away, investors leave, right? It has to benefit them. It has to make money. So how do you think that would affect those kind of sections? Because, we see it here in San Antonio. You go a little bit east of Dignity, those are opportunity zones. Even downtown San Antonio, right? Like some of the north parts of downtown San Antonio is opportunity zones for commercial development and to make it more vibrant downtown. So if you take that out, then is it going to stay distressed and not grow?
This isn't. We worked single-family residential.
Yeah.
To where, yes, these houses encompass some single-family residential areas, but a lot of it is and I can't remember who was it that told me this, that it's like left, right, anything, every policy in the government comes down to one thing. It's creating jobs and economic prosperity. Now, yes, they disagree on things. We should get free healthcare. We should do all this stuff. But when it comes down to it, it comes down to jobs. They might give the perception that they're trying to do these things, but it really comes down to jobs. Right. A lot of these opportunity zones where it doesn't make sense to do things with single-family houses, it's to revitalize dilapidated, rundown commercial buildings. And at that point, taking a building, taking it down to the studs or to the ground, and rebuilding a new one creates jobs. It creates higher wage people moving into those, creates higher tax revenues, and then the housing is a byproduct of those areas that eventually come around to push that stuff out. So where I don't think it's going to be so much, oh, you're gentrifying the areas. That is something that's happened because of it, but they got a new a new building that's generating higher wages, created jobs, and higher tax revenues. So then that's just going to spill over to the housing aspect of it, to where I think there will be some issues risen of it, but or people saying, "Oh, you're doing these things to give the perception that, oh, we'll try to do something for you," but you're not going to create any jobs by eliminating the single family housing aspect of it, because you have these massive commercial buildings and these developments being redone. To where I don't think it's going to mess with those opportunity zones as much as they say. And it's like I've said, the president can't do anything without Congress, so you got to have Congress in order to get those laws overturned and redone.
Yeah, and I mean, and again, to your point, I really hope so, because you made an excellent point of how it affects the job market. And that's the stuff that people don't put together, how nobody ties how everything comes together. You know what I mean? Nobody understands how if you change this is going to affect that and that and that and that. And next thing you know, it kicked you in the ass. You know what I mean? And that's where a lot of things, like, people have come to us. They're like, how has COVID affected you guys? Or right now, it really hasn't.
It hasn't so far.
But the domino effect this is having on the economy, it will. You know, we just don't know when it's going to come around and hit us.
Yeah.
But at some point, it will affect us. You understand? It will affect every industry. It doesn't matter what industry. It's going to even affect Zoom. Because if businesses are not working and they're not operating, nobody's having a Zoom meeting for anything. Right? So at the end of the day, if things are not being done to make sure you incentivize jobs and job creation.
Well, and then, I mean, Tommy puts a good point here, where single-family homes and their mortgages are the building block of this country. 100%. It's like, it comes down to a safety issue. 100%. It also relieves fire hazard issues from insurance providers as you take down this old stuff and redevelop them. Because how many houses do we walk into and it's a two-pronged system for the electrical? Electrical causes huge fires. So that's one of the things, like, I think you're going to give that perception that we feel for you, that you're gentrifying this area to try to appease some of these people. But I don't think they're going to do anything from it, because there's way too many benefits to having economic revitalization go into areas of the market.
Yeah, I mean, I do hope, to your point, that they can't unilaterally enforce things. I never liked what any president or any, governing body does anything like that.
Yeah.
Because it's scary, right? I mean, it's scary when you unilaterally can force something on other people and nobody can defend themselves. So kind of touching on that point, what I consider to be good news is this article right here is Proposition 22, backed by Uber and Lyft, passed in California. So many of you are probably going to be saying, oh, it's California, who gives a damn? Well, this kind of sets the way for a lot of other cities and states to follow, right? You know, it's the same reason why we were following so closely Oregon, what was it, Portland, when they were doing a lot of the things with the landlords, because as they were doing all these things with landlords, we saw that guy here in San Antonio was trying to force the same laws.
Yeah.
Right? So as California goes, as these major city goes, a lot of
they run these pilot, you look at it as like a pilot program.
Exactly.
It's like, all right, they passed it, let's see how it works. And so far, from what the news articles that I follow and the people we follow, like, rent control doesn't work. No. From a landlord perspective. So I don't know what it's like from the other side, because I'm in the real estate space. So, but I want to know, like, they say they do rent control because they want to keep housing prices from rising too fast. But apparently, from what I hear coming out of the West Coast, like that is not what's happening at all.
Well, and we have right here capital asset pricing model. Comments that any idea on whether the CDC eviction moratorium will be extended under the new administration? If they proceed to shut down again, and they proceed the route that they pretty much been saying they will do, I don't see why they wouldn't. Because
the CDC now came out and said doing nationwide shutdowns is the absolute last resort, that it actually causes more health issues than letting this kind of work its way through the system.
Well, they flip flop all the time, so we'll wait until another week, and then they'll say, no, we need more shutdown and all this. But to your point is, I do see it. I do see them extending it, but keep in mind, like we said last week's episode or the episode before that, is that people cannot just not pay their rent if they don't follow the process that the CDC puts out for the moratorium. So there's an actual process that the tenant needs to comply with.
Yep.
There needs to be proof that they've been affected by COVID and that they cannot pay or they cannot make any payments. There's a process. And we've seen it where in Texas, Florida, and many other major cities where evictions have been happening at a record rate because the tenants haven't been able to prove it. They just stopped paying. I'm not saying they haven't been affected.
They just stopped paying and it's like, oh, well, you can't kick me out. It's like, you can't just quit paying because you don't want to pay.
Right.
Like there is a process you have to go through in order to make this actual legitimate thing, which is, is good. To be able to, like, I'm all for, like, if somebody's actually hurting, like, hey, work it out. Like, don't just kick them out of their house because, like, they've been hit by this effect of this thing that they had no control over. I agree, but then you have the people that do just take advantage of it. It's like, oh, well, I'm not going to pay because I can go get free government money and you can deal with it because you're the landlord and you're a bad person.
You're a bad person
because you have a house.
So that moratorium is there, and then going back to the Proposition 22 that I like that it passed was because of that, right? It sets those precedents, and it would have set a really bad one because it literally starts going after gigs. Mm-hmm. Right? Gigs are, you have your Amazon delivery people that, all these Amazon delivery, Grubhub, Uber, stuff that people are using to supplement their income are now going to be affected by this because now you become employee. Right? And if you become
employees and then the companies can't hire because now they got to pay the taxes on. This is what it was by California. It's like they were trying to get tax revenue from it for Social Security, Medicaid, and all the other things, because gig economies have to take that upon themselves to pay that tax, and that's harder to get to and prove than a corporation.
And my thing is, like, if you start becoming an employee as a company, right, as a business owner, what do I look like? What do I look at? If you're Uber and now all of a sudden you had to become my employee, then I'm going to tell you, you need to get your ass there and drive. This is not up to you anymore. You're my employee. This is not that you drive whenever it's convenient for you. You drive when I tell you to drive because you are my employee.
Yeah.
Right? You're working for me. So now you actually got to generate me profit so I can pay for all this stuff for you.
Well, and they said costs are going to go up.
Yeah.
Because on the platform, it's like, hey, we have to take on that cost that we didn't have before. So now Ubers and Lyfts and all those things, they become more expensive because they have to supplement. I think it's funny when they say, oh, we raised the taxes because we thought the corporations were going to pay more of their share. Like, no, they're going to pass it right on along down to whoever the product is, the consumers, until like a new person comes in with a new model and takes that market share away. I think it's just hilarious when they think that's how it works. It's like it never works that way. Well, it's like I have more fees. I'm going to try to pass along as many of those fees as I can to the wherever I generate my revenue from.
Well, it's the same thing that we talked about last week on lumber prices going up. How that's going to keep further pushing what new construction costs are. It's going to further push what new homes sell for. Yep. Because as builders, as investors, nobody and I hope this makes sense to people. Nobody is going to build a house to lose money. Nobody's going to invest in something to lose money. That's not how you run a business. That's not how you grow a business. You can't grow that way. You understand? Unless you're Tesla, we know. But unless you're Tesla, you can't grow at a negative. You need profit. And that means that you need to pass those bills on. So it's the same thing in the UK that we talked about, that they wanted to experiment with negative interest rates.
Yeah.
It's like, all right, you're going to affect the banks. No, you're going to affect the people borrowing from the banks, the people working with the banks, because the banks are going to pass that on.
Yeah.
You know, the same thing with the FHFA trying to force, Fannie and Freddie to go ahead and get out of conservatorship. Well, now they got to increase their fees. They got to increase all the refinances. They got to do all this. So it's like, that's the thing that people don't see when they push this. They look at the first step. Who am I going after? I'm going after this person. Great. That is so honorable. I'm such a great human being. But who does that person affect? And who does that affect? Can we go 7 levels deep here and actually just figure out, like, how does this process actually work if I go after this person? Because now I go after them, and how am I going to help these people out? You understand? So then you're affecting the whole economy with things like that.
Yeah.
So you got to really be careful, and politicians really need to watch out when they do these, again, all-in-one laws that is going to affect all of us. I mean, sad but true. Anything else you want to say about Biden and how he's affecting us before we move on to a fun conversation of things that we've seen this week?
No, not really. But I mean, it's back to the same thing. I think for a lot of people, it's like the president doesn't dictate where everything goes. One guy does not say what the direction of the economy goes. Like, he is one person, he is a voice, but without Congress, you cannot get whatever your wish list done. To where if the Republicans maintain control of the Senate, there has to be some form of bipartisanship to get anything passed, because now you have 2 conflicting sides, 2 different thought processes, and 2 different bodies of governance that have to work together to get things passed. So even if it's Trump, even if it's Biden, there's still one side or the other. It looks like Congress is going to still be split for at least the next 2 years. So people they freak out about, I'm going to get the Trump's the president, this is going to be terrible. It's like, he's one person. He's not going to change the economy, because I woke up Wednesday and the world wasn't over. I woke up Thursday, the world wasn't over. I woke up today, the world wasn't over. One person is not going to make your world and life fall apart to where you need to turn the news off and get away from that stuff and separate that stuff. And you'll realize, your day-to-day life probably didn't change that much. You're not one guy in the White House is not going to make your night and day difference. You wake up one morning and your life is completely changed. That doesn't happen that way.
I think the issue that we have here is more of a personal issue that people have. I believe that the last 5 to 10 years, right, what has been one of the trendiest thing is personal development.
Yeah.
Personal development books, the seminars, the gurus, personal development life coaches that are 20 years old and all this stuff, personal development, making yourself better. And it's like, the more personal development that's been coming out, the less I feel people are aware, have any form of being self-aware, understanding their own thing, understanding their own emotions, their own feelings, what drives them. And it's kind of like, I was thinking about this yesterday. The election has reminded me of, you're sick, you go to your doctor, you give them your symptoms, they give you a pill, you get better. Days, weeks, maybe months later, the symptoms come back, you repeat the process. You go to the doctor, they give you a pill, it gets better, right?
Yeah.
But you're never working on the cause, right? A lot of times just simple exercise and dieting can cure so many illnesses, right?
Yeah.
So what's happening is that people are looking at elections as going to the doctor and getting a pill, right? The pill is the president or the senator or whoever you're voting for. They're going to come in and they're going to treat the symptom. But you're still not fixing the cause. That's why it's getting to a point where it's like, it damn near doesn't even matter who gets elected. It's the same shit happens everywhere.
Yeah.
You understand? The same shit happens. The same laws get passed. The same garbage gets done. Because
it's just a different route.
Yeah, because
they
it's
went
just
this way, the other boilers went that way, but the underlying cause is still the same. I look at it this way: we're one person wants to tax and spend, the other wants to borrow and spend, but it still comes down to the national GDP or the national debt levels still continue to rise.
Exactly. And guess what? People were making it a point of saying, "Oh, but under Trump, look how much higher our national debt got." It's like, yes, because it's gonna keep growing. It doesn't matter who the hell is president.
Yeah.
It's going to keep growing. And guess what? Under Biden, it's still going to keep growing.
Well, they say they're going to tax. And I'm like, oh, we're going to tax. But then they want to use those tax revenues to fund more government programs, not pay down national debt.
Well, yeah. And so, I mean, so you got all this. So my thing is like with all this personal development and all these things that people are doing, actually don't just read it just so you can post a blurb about it on Instagram. Like actually implement the personal development part. Take responsibility for yourself and try to make a change within you so you can change locally, so it can change nationally. You understand? Like you voting for a president, every 4 years or voicing your opinions on Facebook very firmly every 4 years doesn't make any difference. All it does is frustrate the hell out of you, frustrates the hell out of your friends, and it just creates more chaos and divisiveness and leads absolutely nowhere. So, that's kind of my 2 cents on that. But one thing that we wanted to kind of touch on before we wrap up is we've been getting some deals from wholesalers. And
oh, my God.
And my goodness.
We had a first yesterday.
Yeah, yesterday was our first.
Oh, my God. Been in this for 5-6 years.
Yeah.
So I got a deal from
and we've seen hundreds of houses. I
mean, yeah. Some really trash, nasty houses. This one, the house was trash. And it wasn't. This happened to us because the house was gross. So basically what happened is the first time we've ever walked in a house and made it 10 foot into the house and turned around and just walked right back out. And it wasn't because the house was nasty. It was. But it was one of those that we got I got the wholesale deal. And what was it? They wanted $80,000 for the house. Mm-hmm. And he put $35,000 in repairs. I know, never trust those. Go ahead and just double it. Looked at the ARV and I was interested in what I saw in the photos. And they said, oh, well, it's got this extra unit in the garage that you could convert into an extra rental property. And that's what I was interested in for it. And we walked up to the house. In the front of the house, okay, not that bad. I see some wood rot, some extra stuff, not that big a deal. But my God, the second we walked into that house, it just like, no. The smoke damage was the worst I'd ever seen. Yeah. From smoker damage. I mean, that stuff, it was the point where we've dealt with some smoker damage house. We've sprayed the walls, cleaned them up, repainted them, and we've been just fine. This house, I don't think that would work. I mean, it looked like a layer of paint was on the walls. So much nicotine was on the walls.
It looked like a layer of the sheetrock was peeling off the wall.
And paint was peeling off the walls because of the nicotine damage onto it. You have to gut this entire house. And the extra little unit we were interested in, dude, the building just looked dilapidated and run down. Where it's I could scrape it and rebuild it.
That was essentially why we walked out, because we walk in. I mean, we barely got past the kitchen. This is not an exaggeration. Seriously, we took maybe 5 steps in the house. I looked around. I looked at John. He's like, nope. I'm like, nope. Because it was at this point, 1,000 square foot home. We're like, we got to tear it down to the studs. At that point, you might as well just tear the whole house down and build a brand new home. And this guy wants $80,000 with $30,000 in repairs.
But that's where I said, we've been running into this aspect a lot to where we walk out because we know you don't have the contract that low.
No.
It's usually okay, wholesaler, even if he's got some massive $20,000 wholesale spread on this thing, it's that's still $60,000 that you have it under contract for. Dude, I'm going to offer you land value. Yeah. If we bought the house, we were just going to scrape the house and rebuild something there because it was in such poor condition. Yep. And I know they don't have it at that value. That happened earlier this week too, where we walked a house and it's dude, your repairs are so far off. And what I have to offer you is...
At least they were off by double the amount.
Yeah, double, not triple. Well, yeah, these guys, I mean, $35,000. It's dude, I'm tearing this house down and rebuilding. Your $35,000 budget, it's yeah, make that $150 because we got to rebuild this house.
We were looking at it. We're like, okay, let's play a game here. Let's say you have $35,000 on this house with the little unit in the back. What can you put $35,000 to at least get somebody in the house? We're even if you were to paint the walls, I don't even know if paint would stick on those walls. You understand? You would have to kill. You would have to do a lot of shit. Then the foundation was jacked. It had no AC. I mean, I'm sure it has a ton of plumbing and electrical issues.
Yeah.
I was like, there's just no way you can do it. And no way in hell you can do it for $30,000. And I don't care what magical contractors you have. Just a material alone, you're probably going to...
Adding an air conditioner on 1,000 square foot house, the whole new system.
Yeah.
You got to frame it out, build it. You're probably looking at spending $6,000, $7,000, just $8,000 just in that alone. And then that didn't even... It was terrible. And then just to be Yeah.
Well,
we turned around and walked right back out.
We have Traps here. He says he or she, I don't know, Traps. They all want too much. That he says having no luck with wholesaler, and it's like, I don't even think that they want too much. I don't think it's that. I don't think that the wholesalers are saying, oh, I want 30 grand profit or anything like that. My issue and what we're trying to stress the point here is that you are not negotiating correctly. Yeah. You are not understanding what a deal looks like. You don't know what a deal looks like. You're guesstimating on repairs. You're guesstimating on all these things. And I don't even know where the hell you're pulling these guesses from, because you're not off by like 5 or 10 grand. You are off by, in the first house that we went to see, you were off by like damn near 100 grand.
It's terrible. It's like they get it under contract just for whatever they want. I just want to get a contract. Like, well, I'll sell it to you at 70. All right, we'll contract that. And then where they're actually getting, a lot of people are getting better on the values. The ARVs.
Well,
yeah, but then all they do is like, well, we're just going to lessen the repairs to where it looks like there's a good amount of spread there. It's like, dude, that doesn't work. And I think what it is like, for far too long, you've had the market bailing people out.
Yeah.
On the in-buy, on the sell to the retail market. So now you have a lot of people entering the market that is incentivizing these wholesalers to still get these deals done or to push them. So they're like, well, we'll just get it or whatever, and somebody's going to want it so bad. Yeah. There's so many people that don't know what they're doing in real estate and buying these things that they can get them sold. And that it incentivizes this terrible negotiating tactics of just like, get it on a contract for whatever it is, sell it to whoever sells the best, and be done with it.
Yeah, well, and one thing that I always tell wholesalers, and Trap says, I wish I could go with you guys when you check out houses. Well, if you live in San Antonio, I'm more than happy to let anybody tag along when we check out houses. I have no issue.
You just got to realize it might be like, hey, I'm heading to a house right now. I'm gonna be there in 30 minutes, and I'm only gonna be there for 10. Like, it's not.
We don't waste time. We don't schedule out weeks or anything like that. To us, is if a deal makes sense, we are there within the next 5 minutes. So, reach out to me. Shoot me an email at John@PrimeHomes, JON. If you put an H, you'll get the other John, but you'll get one of us. We're more than happy with whenever we go look at a property to bring you guys along. We did a walkthrough that our videographer Dre walked with me, and I wish it would have been better, but the wholesaler brings me the deal. He says, just a heads up, it's a hoarder house.
Huh.
That was
a pretty
this
good
is
one.
the understatement of the year when I walked into the house. I've been in hoarder houses. We bought a house that was 1,200 square foot, and we got like 4 40-yard dumpsters just to clear out their crap. And that doesn't include the 2 10-by-10 storage units of their stuff that they actually took with them.
Yeah.
So you can imagine a 1,200 square foot house. That's a tiny home. There was a lot of crap in there. So I'm used to going through hoarder homes. This house didn't have a ceiling. Literally, the ceiling was on the floor. The insulation was on the floor. No,
it wasn't on the floor. It was on top of all the stuff that was quote unquote the hoarder house.
Which, if the ceiling would have still been up, it probably wasn't that bad of a hoarder house, because the actual stuff there wasn't that bad.
That kitchen was pretty bad. There was no. Usually hoarder houses have a
it
walking
seems like
path.
Somebody ransacked it, like went through and like started just
trashing everything.
Yeah, trashing things, because it was just cabinets were torn open. But I'm walking through this house. Man, what did he say the repairs were? I want to say they were somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe 70 grand, 60 grand. I don't think the wholesaler even walked the property. That's another thing that pisses me off, where it's like they're not even walking the property, and they're sending it to me with repairs and all this. At least tell me, look, hey, here's the stuff that I've gotten. I actually haven't walked the property. I'm fine with that. Let me know. You understand? Yeah. Because in that way, I know it's like,
like Chris and Vest puts in here, it's almost better if they don't even provide a rehab estimate.
I
agree, but it's also like, if you're going to do that, provide good pictures. Don't give me, here's 6 pictures of the house. And
they're always the best ones.
Yeah, and then it's like, they're just trying to incentivize. Well, I just got to get people to the house. Like, dude, they just piss me off when you do that because now I just wasted my time to go over and look. Like yesterday, just walked in, trying to walk right back out. 30 minutes, 45 minutes of our day just gone like that. Yep. And it just like it builds no reputation as you as a name and you as a business to where like I'm gonna remember that stuff. It does build
a reputation that next time you send me a deal, I'm going to probably second guess and shoot you a lowball offer before I even leave my office.
Yeah.
Because where I do like, Chris, to your point, an actual repair estimate or a repair bid from them is I like to know if they send me the repair bid and they send me enough pictures that I can kind of gauge. I can see if you're already way off on the repair, and then I can see if it's like, well, you want 80, and I know just based on these pictures, I'm in the 50 neighborhood. So if there's no dialogue there in 50, then I'm not even bothering going out.
Yeah, right? Just like when I first called that guy the other day, it's like, hey, I want to go see that. The day he sent it out on the email out blasting it, I put it out. I was like, all right, numbers look good. I call him and it's like, hey, I'm interested. Like, when can we go see the house? He goes, well, I had a key to the front door, but then a deadbolt got locked, so I'm waiting to get a key to the back door. So I got to get that figured out before I can get people in the house. Like, okay. He's like, but I just want to let you know that I've generated a lot of interest at that $80,000 price point. So I don't want you to waste your time without seeing the house and stuff if the 80's not going to work. I was like, you just told me you didn't have access to the house, but you're saying that you got plenty of interest at the 80 grand. After walking the house, I feel bad for whoever. If somebody buys that thing for 80 grand, it's like, I don't know what you're going to do with it.
It's like we talk about. It's their antiquated sales tactics or what they think is a sales tactic to make it seem more interesting. Like the other wholesaler that he tells us, and this we've heard it so much that every time somebody tells us this, we kind of like, all right, yeah, okay, you're not.
You and the other 25 wholesalers.
Like, he tells us, it's just that I'm flooded with deals. I have too much going on right now. But if I need to, I will take it down. I'll take it down and I'll buy it myself and I'll just do
if I can't get the price that I'm trying to get right now, this 75 grand, like I'll just take it down and do it myself.
And usually what that means is that you are trying to make me feel like, oh shit, this is a really good deal, because if not, why would he buy it, right? Yeah. So if I'm an experienced investor, because if you're looking at it that way, you are an inexperienced investor. You understand? Because to me, I have too many deals. Okay.
Well, then it's one of those things like it's just
who turns down deals when they have
once you get experience and you go to enough houses and see these things, it's like if you were an experienced investor, you would not be that far off on the rehab.
Yeah.
And you would be actually, and if it was a true thing that like, hey, I don't have enough, and you do want to sell the thing, you're going to sell it toward there's margin on the game. Yeah. And you are going to try to wholesale it and actually be truthful with it, but like it was like word for word the way he went into it. I'm like, I have heard this like 50 times from like 15 different, like 20, 30 different wholesalers of like, I'd take it down myself, but I'm just too busy to where if I don't get the price that I'm asking today, I'll just take it down and do it myself. I mean, like verbatim, word for word, it's exactly what they all say. And it's just like, no, you're not. You're not fooling anybody. You're not fooling me.
I'd rather you even say, because this is something I've said, but we haven't wholesaled in quite some time because we do pick up our properties, but I have said where it's like, look, honestly, the numbers are tight for me. They're not something that, I don't have the contractors low enough to make this make sense. Yeah. I don't have the money cheap enough to make this make sense for me. The margins are too tight. I'm willing to just pass this off to somebody that can get this stuff.
Well, and that's also like, that's how we would handle it. Not to say that he wasn't being truthful, but it just 9 out of 10 times and direct experience, like, that is not the case. So now if everybody else is saying that, you need to quit saying that, because now I'm lumping you in with all the other people that are just trashy wholesalers, don't know what they're doing.
This is not just to trash wholesalers, all right? There's an actual solution to all of this. This solution is when you don't know how to determine repairs, when you don't know how to understand if it's a deal, reach out to a potential buyer that is a real buyer, not another wholesaler, an actual buyer. Wholesalers do not understand repairs, all right? And this is not a knock on wholesalers, just that you haven't renovated a house. You don't understand what it means when you have to open up a wall, or when you have to move something, or when you have foundation issues where the kitchen is. You haven't been through it, right? So it's not a knock on you guys. It's just to let you know. Get an investor that would buy that house and tell them, hey, I'm going to check out this house in this neighborhood. I know you're interested. Would you mind walking it with me and letting me know what you think? right? Because then they can walk with you. That's how I learned. Honestly, I grew up in construction, but as a contractor, I know how to do the job, not what job needs to be done. So I would go in and bid out, I need to replace the trim. I need to replace all the stuff. And when I started walking with investors, they're like, no, not this neighborhood. You paint the trim. No, you keep the cabinets. No, you leave the floor. You understand stuff that I didn't know as a contractor. So not walking it with your contractor. You need to walk it with an investor that will buy the property. So then that way that investor can tell you, okay, based on this house, you have these issues, these issues, these issues. This is what I'm looking at. Ask questions. Not just ask, how much is the repair? No, why? What are you repairing? Because there's a lot of times, this also happens, that you have investors that are going to repair things that other investors wouldn't repair. And you have vice versa, right? The ones that wouldn't repair things that we probably would repair. So you got to make sure you ask them, what are you touching? Why are you touching it? How much is that costing you? What are you projecting? Because then that becomes, and it makes you a much better wholesaler. And that's what helped us. That's how we grew our business. That's how we were able to scale to this point and become great wholesalers, because we kept asking our buyers. Whenever they say, no, I'm not buying it. Well, why? Why are you not buying it? Well, here's the repairs. Here's what I'm looking at. Here's what I'm like, oh, shit, you know what? You're right. I didn't look at those things. Now I adjusted my bid the next house I went to. And then it got to a point where I was able to nail down repair budgets very, very tightly, to a point where, where would it be different is it depends on who your contractors were. And if you were, maybe getting a GC versus subbing it out. But those were little things, not things like to this point where one house, they were off on the repair budget by like damn near $80,000 to $100,000. And the other one, the house needed to be scrapped because of what the values were. So it's like, you weren't off by $5,000 or $10,000. You were off by the price of a whole other house. You were off by a ton of money. Now you can't go back to that homeowner and say, hey, it's easier to renegotiate $5,000 or $10,000. It's very hard to renegotiate $100,000. You understand? Especially when the house is worth.
Or you need to give it to me for free.
Or you need to pay me.
We won yesterday. It's like, dude, this thing is destroyed. Like, I want land value.
Yeah. So that is really, our advice to you guys, and I hope that makes sense. I hope that's something that can resonate. And if you're not sure as a wholesaler and you're going to these houses and you're saying, hey, I don't understand how to price this out. I don't understand. Is this really a deal? Ask a local investor that is a buyer to go with you. Us as buyers, we are more than happy to go with you at that point, because you haven't gotten on the contract. We can help. We can make sure that you get it at the right price. And I want you to make money, because I want you to keep bringing me more deals. You understand? Because I can't do that work. So I'd rather train you and show you everything so you can just start bringing contracts at the prices that make sense. But these prices are just astronomical. These people are off by tens of thousands of dollars on the repairs of these properties. You're killing it. You're hurting sellers. And if you happen to scam a buyer into it, that's exactly what you're doing. You're scamming somebody into it. So you could have said before, I didn't know any better, and that's a perfect excuse, but you do know now. Well, if you're listening to this, you know better. It's
just rampant across the industry now at this point.
Yeah.
Everybody's doing all the exact same thing, because the wholesalers, they're not finding deals, and they're finding whatever contract they have and just trying to scrape by. And I guess that's part of the capitalistic market, to where eventually they are going to go out of business and they're going to have to go do something else.
Yeah.
Because it's like, it just doesn't work. They can't make the money at it, and because it's just not there.
Yeah. So I hope that this episode has been valuable to you guys. If it has, hit that like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, let people know, because as you guys can see, what we do here is we try to help you make sense of the noise and the mess that's going around. We try to share stuff that we're learning. That's what we do on our channel. We share our strategies, stuff that we've learned, how we're adjusting to the market, how we're flipping houses in this market or picking up rentals. We share all these things with you, right? Because we want you to be an educated investor. And the reason we give all this stuff away for free is because we know the majority of people don't take action. We understand that. I've been giving away stuff for free for the last 2 or 3 years. Literally everything that we do step by step. We don't hold anything back. We share everything, and people still don't take action. So that's why we share it, because we want some of you, the very few that do take action, and do it the right way. because that's what we need. We need good investors. We need real estate investors in this market that can start giving us a good name again. So make real estate investing great again.
There you go.
Had to do it. So with that being said, I think it was good. I had a good talk. Sorry for all the technical difficulties.
Make sure it's worked out next week.
Yeah. We'll I mean, I don't know what the hell happened. Honestly, I don't know. Well, hopefully it doesn't happen again next week.
Cameras, microphones, Google,
something went off.
The internet, something didn't click.
Yeah. So, but I appreciate you guys joining and supporting us and helping us out. And that's it for us for this week. Have an amazing weekend, and we will catch you guys on the next one.